Welcome back to another video. Today is going to be an architecture video. I've tried filming this. Hang on. That's better. Right, so this video is going to be split up in two parts. First part of the video is going to be simple advice on everything you need to know before studying architecture. So such like equipment, software you need to learn, skills you need to learn before going into architecture. And the second part of the video is going to be a short Q&A. So I have 3 questions that I feel like people need to know the answer to, that people can ask me on Instagram. So I thought I'd put that into the video just to make it a little bit more informative. So yeah, sit back, relax and enjoy.
It's not good enough for me since I've been with you. Ooh. It's not gonna work for you. Nobody can equal me. No, no.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
I'm gonna sip on the strength.
So yes, this video is going to be everything you need to know before studying architecture. Last week was actually A-level results, so I thought this would be a good time to create a video like this, as people will be looking to go into architecture in September and kind of need to know the basics of what they need to know before studying the course. So first things first, I've been asked this question a lot. So equipment, what equipment do you need before studying architecture or going into architecture? So when I applied for my course, I had an unconditional offer, so I got told quite early on the materials that I needed. Before going to university, they just basically just gave me a list, and I went to Staples and just bought everything on the list that basically I needed for the whole year. But I'm just going to give you a brief list of equipment that you'd need that I kind of use the most throughout the year, as I'm assuming some unis won't actually tell you what materials you'll need, and you kind of want to get yourself prepared. So equipment, first things first, we have pencils. Obviously pencils and rubbers is a massive one. Obviously you're going to need a pencil, you're going to be drawing, you're studying architecture for God's sake. You need a pencil, you need rubbers. Next thing, pen, so fine liners. In architecture it's very key that you've got all your fine liners, so 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 all the way up to 1 is essential, because when you're doing floor plans, sections and elevations, you've got different line weights to indicate how far a wall is away from you, to make the drawing a bit more prominent, make it like speak to you a little bit better. So having them fine liners is key, you will definitely need them, so I thought I'd throw that into the video. So fine liners all the way up to 1. We then have pads, so notepads for taking notes in lectures. That is very key. I'll talk about that later on in the video, but notepads is key to make notes in lectures, obviously. We then got tracing paper, so you can get some really cheap tracing paper that'll help you out massively with your drawing. So if you don't have great drawing skills, you can use tracing paper to, I don't know, once you've done a really good drawing and you're happy with it and then you realise you've got to alter it, you lay the tracing paper over the top, draw over the top of it, and you can alter it that way. So it kind of saves you a lot of time redrawing something. And also if you're looking to draw a building on site, you can take a picture of the site, print it off, and then draw over the top of it with the tracing paper and make it look a lot more realistic and kind of in like a perspective view, rather than looking a bit skewy and all that. Is when you've got site maps, so when you're doing site analysis, when you've got a site that you're going to be designing for, you will have a site map, let's say 1 to 200 scale, 1 to 100 scale, or 1 to 500 scale, maybe even 1 to 2000 or 1000 scale. You'll soon find out. But anyway, you'll lay your tracing paper at the top. You can do a drawing over the site, a very brief drawing over the site, and then you can alter that doing sun paths, wind, like viewpoints and all that kind of stuff, pedestrian movement, vehicle movement, access points, all that kind of stuff. So tracing paper is very, very useful. You can also use grease paper, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it's very cheap and it will save you a lot of money if you're using grease paper. Someone at work actually advised me to use grease paper, as it saved her a lot of money when she did that at university. Excuse me. Right, next thing we have is a very key one, access to a computer. So having access to a computer, whether that is your own computer, a computer that you maybe have at home, or the one that you have at university. I'm assuming most unis will provide a computer anyway, but having access to a computer is massive. Like, being able to use software such as InDesign and Photoshop is very key in your first year. Being able to manipulate a photo in Photoshop to make it look better, make it look more realistic, to put it in context, is very, very key. So you need to be able to have access to Photoshop. And also InDesign is very useful for doing digital booklets. So I did 2 digital booklets in my first year, and I used InDesign on both of them. So InDesign is very key as well. And when you go into the architect, if you go into the architect kind of field in the future, a lot of them do use InDesign for planning applications and stuff like that. So getting to grips with InDesign and Photoshop early on is key, but obviously you can't do that if you don't have access to a computer. So access to a computer is very key. You don't need a high spec computer for first year really. Using Photoshop and InDesign, you can just use a bog standard computer. And then kind of as you move forward, you maybe have to think about other softwares that you'll need and like upgrading your computer. So next thing we have scale rulers. Scale rulers is key, obviously knowing the scale of your buildings, knowing what scale you're drawing your buildings at. And pretty much all architects use scale rulers obviously to make sure everything's to scale, especially if you're doing it hand drawn as well. Obviously if you're using a computer, doing drawings on computers, it doesn't matter as much, but scale rulers is key. Portfolio, case and sleeves. So at some point in your first year or some point over the course, you will need a portfolio and sleeves, so you might as well get it out of the way early. I had 2 portfolio hand-ins, so twice in my first year I had to buy a portfolio and sleeves for the portfolio. So I had a portfolio that cost me £40, but if you can get yourself prepared early on, get yourself an Amazon, oh, excuse me, and buy a cheap portfolio with loads of sleeves because you'll need it at some point. I believe you can get a portfolio sleeve on Amazon for about £15 that have sleeves already stuck into them. Whereas spending £40 like me, and I did that twice, so I spent £80 on portfolios when I could have spent about £30 my first year. So definitely sort yourself out of a portfolio before you go in, because you will need it sometime, and it'll kind of save you stress when it comes to portfolio handings because you'll already have that portfolio there waiting for you. Next thing is pins. So pins for presentations is key. When you're spending a lot of time on kind of presenting your work on your panels, laying it out really nicely, making it look really professional, getting yourself ready to do a presentation of your work, the most important thing to have is pins. Pins is very key. You need pins because a lot of people on presentation day will be running around asking people for pins, because a lot of people don't have pins because they either forget to bring them to uni or they just haven't bought any yet. And then people end up start taping on their panels onto the wall, and it just looks ridiculous. So on each corner they've got a piece of masking tape, and it just looks it just looks silly. Just get loads of them because you will lose them as well. So just get multiple packets of pins, because then also if your friend needs one at uni, when you're presenting, you can obviously hand them out and be a sick guy and just be nice, yeah. So pins, multiple packets of pins. Next thing we have Yoo-hoo glue. So Yoo-hoo glue goes like it's absolutely nothing. When you're making models, everyone uses Yoo-hoo glue. Yoo-hoo glue is just the glue to go to when you're using card. Maybe when you're doing stuff a little bit stronger like wood, you obviously need like PVA and stuff like that. But Yoo-hoo glue is key because you're going to be doing a lot of model making, a lot of sketch models in the build up of your design work. So Yoo-hoo glue is very key. Get loads of it. You can actually go to Poundland and get a £1 Yoo-hoo glue tubes, like the big ones, rather than buying them at university, because I used to buy the little ones at university pretty much 2 or 3 times a week for about, I don't know, £3 each with a tub like that big. Where you can go to Aldi, get £1 tubs for like the big boy ones, the big boy Yoo-hoo tubs. Scaled people, so when you're doing models, sketch models to scale, you need scale people to indicate them in scale to the person, and then also helps you kind of get your model in scale as well if you've got a person to kind of indicate it to. And the final thing is T-square. So T-square will help you massively with drawing straight lines in comparison to the page. So obviously the T-square goes along the bottom of the page and goes straight up, so you've got a nice 90-degree angle. So T-squares are very key to getting your drawings 90-degree to your page. So yeah, that's a very brief equipment list that I wrote myself. Obviously if there's more stuff that you feel like you'll need, go ahead and buy it. Obviously your uni may provide a list of everything you need as well. So this is just me trying to help people that maybe not have an idea of what equipment they need. So after equipment, we are going to be talking about, so moving forward I'm going to talk about a couple books that you may need. These are 2 books that I don't personally have, but I will be buying before I go back to uni, and they are the Metric Handbook and the Architect's Pocketbook. So the Metric Handbook I've been using a lot whilst working in the architect's firm. New to the channel, I'm working in an architect's firm for 3 months as kind of like a summer job. I was meant to do a placement for 6 weeks and they asked me to stay for longer. But if you want to know more information about that, watch the video. Anyway, so book, Metric Handbook, basically that's got all the building regulations within it, telling you everything you need in pretty much everything. So everything you want to know about architecture, it's in there. Everything you need to know, any measurements you need to know, dimensions. Just that book is amazing. So the Metric Handbook, I'll put it on the screen for you now. You can get it on Amazon for about £30. Then the Architect's Pocketbook is very similar, but obviously a condensed version. I'll put that on the screen for you here. You can also get that from Amazon. The next thing, a lot of people ask me the question, what do I need to study to do architecture? So what A-levels do I need to do architecture? So a lot of people that are going into GCSEs or doing their GCSEs and moving into A-levels ask me this question, because obviously they have an idea that they want to study architecture, but they don't know what A-levels to take and kind of how hard they should work in each GCSE to study architecture. So this is my personal opinion. I think that you need to have a creative subject. So a creative subject, I mean in photography, art, graphics, resistant materials, textiles, anything along them creative lines, just to get your brain kind of working in the creative manner. Because when you're going into university, obviously you need to be quite creative with your drawings. You need to think of innovative ideas. So if you're studying an art, like a creative subject back at school, you'll kind of get yourself going with the creative mindset, and it'll kind of give you a nice base level with going forward in architecture. Also with graphics, that was massively key for helping me rearrange my panels, making them look really nice, making them really presentable, making them as best as I can possibly be. So graphics helped me out massively with that, and art obviously helped me out with my drawing. But obviously you don't have to study them. I'll talk about that later on in the video, because I've got a question about that. But yeah, creative subject is key, I feel. Then obviously you can have maths and physics as well. So physics would be actually really useful in kind of learning about tension, torsion, and all that rubbish that I'm not great with. But realistically, it doesn't actually matter. So I advise you guys to have a bit of knowledge in Photoshop and InDesign, like I mentioned earlier on. Photoshop and InDesign are key, massively key in first year. Kind of help you massively. Photoshop helps you massively. So say if you ruined a drawing and you need to draw it again, it'll save you a lot of time because you just Photoshop it together rather than redrawing it all out again. So Photoshop is key, and that will help you massively in terms of putting your building in context. And then just a couple more things, do some research on famous architects, so you kind of get to grip with some of the architecture out there, some historic architecture, and kind of who's designed it, their style and all that kind of stuff. Be ready to take notes in lectures. Taking notes in lectures is actually quite key when you're coming to write your essays and to do your digital booklets. So make sure you're ready to take notes in lectures. A lot of people don't even go to lectures, which I do not advise. Go to your lectures and take notes. And then the final thing I want to mention is get to grips with design periods such as Art Deco, Bauhaus, etc. So if you're studying graphics at A-levels, you'll actually learn this, so you'll be alright. But getting to grips with like kind of design periods, famous architects, the buildings that kind of link them together, and you'll kind of get to grips with what kind of buildings associated with each design movement and what architects were designing in that design movement, and like how their style of designing, and that will help you moving forward, because you do learn that kind of stuff in first year. So if you get to grips with that before going into university, it'll help you out massively. You can relax a bit more, and then you can kind of build up your knowledge whilst you're at university. Right, so to the final part of the video, we're going to be doing a short Q&A. If you're up to this point, thank you for watching. Make sure you like the video. So question number 1, is it mandatory to have skills in drawing before studying architecture? No, it is not. I get this question asked me a lot, because a lot of people don't know whether to study art or graphics or whatever at A-levels, because they don't have any skills in drawing. But personally, a lot of people that started university last year in my course, they had no skill in art or anything, but because as you develop through the course, you kind of learn how to do standard drawings. You don't really need to have a skill in drawing. So obviously drawing plans, section, elevations, it's all straight lines, so it's not obviously not that difficult to draw a straight line, but you just got to kind of learn how everything's laid out, how a section looks, how an elevation looks, and how a plan works. But you don't really need to have skill in drawing. Obviously when it comes to drawing stuff in context, it helps you massively. Obviously it makes your work look much better, but you will learn that kind of stuff as you go through the course. First year taught me a lot of things with drawing, and I thought I was quite good at drawing before going into university, but it's helped me a lot, and it's made me realise that I'm not, and that a lot of the skills that I do have didn't really help me anyway. So drawing is not mandatory, no, but if you can study art at A level, or if you're interested in studying art at A level, it's a bonus, because it will help you massively as you progress through the course, because you'll have that basic skill of drawing, if you know what I mean. So the second question, this was actually a really good question that someone asked me. He actually messaged me on results day a few weeks ago, and this is what he asked me. It's kind of shortened down because it was quite a big message, but I've kind of shortened it down for the video. So I had an unconditional offer, and I still have been accepted at uni. I only got 1 A level, and I'm now doubting my ability to work hard during the course. Any advice to give me on actually whether I should start university? So this guy obviously had an unconditional offer. I'm assuming he kind of had that in his brain when he went for his exams and didn't do so great at the end of it. So he came out with 1 A level, still has an unconditional offer though, still going to university, but obviously has the mindset that he maybe isn't capable of studying at university, studying architecture, which is quite an intense course, and maybe thinking that he can't do it because he didn't do so well in his A levels. And I replied with him, well, to you guys, to everyone, is if you haven't done so well at your A levels but you still got into university, forget about your A levels, it doesn't matter anymore. You're going to university now. Once you're at university, obviously once you've got your degree, your A levels don't matter anymore. Once you're in university, your A levels don't matter anymore. So once you're in, forget about your A levels and kind of use your failure or your not so great results in A levels to make sure that you do really well at university. So that's my personal opinion. So use your A levels as a bit of a motivation to make sure you do really well at university, and do not pull out, because that would be the worst thing you could do. Once you're at university, you don't even have to worry about A levels. And if you think that you're not worthy of working as hard as you can, well, give it a go, see how you get on. If you don't do very well, then you can always drop out and join something else later on, or just not go to university. University is not for everyone. So definitely go to university. If you feel like you don't have the ability to go to university, still go and use your A levels as motivation to make yourself work harder, and really make sure that you do really well at university. And if you don't, then it's fine. Not everyone does well at university. At least you're giving it a go, but just don't drop out just because your A levels weren't as good as you wanted them to be. So yeah. The third and final question, pretty sick question I thought. Do you plan on having your own studio / have your own firm in the future and having people work for yourself like the 3x40 architect? So I put the 3x40 design architect on the screen for you now. He's a YouTuber, he's an architect, he's absolutely insane. Like, I've watched the videos a lot, it's given me some inspiration for my personal videos. So yeah, the question is, well, the answer to that question is definitely, I'm definitely wanting to have my own business. That is probably the whole aim of me studying architecture, is to come out the other end and set up my own business as an architect. Have my own architect firm, have my own studio, tell people what to do, be the boss. So obviously whilst I'm working at this architect's firm at the moment for the past 3 months, I've kind of realised that I don't want to be the guy sat in the office doing the nitty gritty jobs. I want to be the boss telling me, or telling the people what to do, doing the nitty little gritty jobs. Forget that. So yeah, I definitely want to be the boss. I definitely want my own company. That's something that I've always wanted since I was a little kid. I want to be my own boss, telling people what to do and kind of be in charge with everything. Being the man that's running the company is definitely something that I would look up to and wanting to do. So yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you found that interesting or helpful or anything. If you have any more questions, hit them up in the comment section down below. It'd be much appreciated. So yeah, thank you for watching the video. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button. Stay tuned for my upcoming architecture videos. I'm thinking of doing a couple more, but I thought I'd put this one out there before the people went to university, because obviously that would be quite useful on my voice. So yeah, I'll see you next time.
Can't do nothing, you can't do. Swerve it. Subscribe to Thomas Roundtree, legend.